The Mafia Boss forced female prisoner drink heavily, but she fought back and took over the empire. The wine is already open when they push me through the door. I smell it before I see anything. Dark fruit, oak, something almost medicinal underneath. My wrists are raw from the zip ties they cut off an hour ago. My heels are gone, and the stone floor is cold enough to punish. The cellar is lit by 3 iron candelabras, old ones, the kind that belong in a chapel or a tomb. He is already sitting there, Don Luciano Malaspina, the Wolf of Palermo. I have read about him in financial forensic reports the way other women read about celebrities, with equal parts fascination and revulsion. I have traced his money through 14 shell companies, 3 offshore accounts in Malta, and 1 very tidy laundromat in Catania that does not clean clothes. I know his empire better than most of his own men. I have never seen his face until now. He is exactly what the surveillance photos failed to capture. Not just dangerous, something beyond that. He sits with the stillness of a man who has never needed to rush anything in his life because everything always comes to him eventually. Dark hair, dark eyes that catch candlelight like obsidian catches sun, a jaw that looks carved rather than grown. He is in shirt sleeves, which is somehow more terrifying than a suit. The intimacy of it, the casualness, as though I have walked into his sitting room uninvited. He lifts a glass of wine toward me like a toast. Serafina Bellagamba, he says, not a question. Sit down. I do not sit. I stand in the center of the room, barefoot on cold stone, and I look at him. My heart is a fist slamming against my ribs. My face is still. He tilts his head. Something almost like amusement crosses his features, but not quite. It is more the look of a man who has found a chess piece he did not know was on the board. You've been studying my accounts for 8 months, he says. You flagged the Catania laundromat in March, the Malta Trust in June. You were 2 weeks away from bringing the full dossier to the Guardia di Finanza. He pauses, takes a slow, deliberate sip. I'm curious what a woman who tracks money for a living thinks she's doing standing in my wine cellar without shoes. Being kidnapped, presumably, I say. His mouth curves. Not a smile exactly, more a recognition. You'll drink with me. That's not a question either. He pours a second glass without waiting for my answer. The wine is the color of a bruise, almost purple, catching red at the edges when the candlelight moves through it. He sets it on the edge of the table nearest me. I look at it. I look at him. I do not move toward either. I don't drink alone with men who kidnap women, I say. Then it's fortunate I'm not most men. He leans back in his chair, crosses one ankle over his knee, the perfect picture of a man with nowhere to be. The wine is Nero d'Avola, my family's vineyard, Agrigento province, 2003. We lost the vintage the following year in a drought. There are fewer than 40 bottles left. He looks at me steadily. I'm sharing one with you. Try to appreciate the gesture. I walk to the chair across from him. I sit. I do not touch the glass. He watches me the way a wolf watches something it has already decided to catch, patiently, without urgency, with a focus that is almost contemplative. Why am I alive? I ask. Because dead accountants can't answer questions. And after the questions? He considers this with what appears to be genuine thoughtfulness. That depends entirely on you, Bella. He lifts his chin toward the glass. Drink. We have a long night ahead. I pick up the glass. I let the smell reach me. Dark plum. Iron. Something older underneath that I cannot name. My mind is moving in 2 directions at once. One part is afraid. The other part, the part that spent 8 months inside the bloodstream of this man's finances, is paying very close attention. The first sip burns. Rich, heavy, almost too much. I feel it land. He watches me with those black ice eyes, and I make a decision in that moment that I do not let reach my face. I am going to learn everything about this room. Every guard rotation, every temperature shift in his voice, every crack in this ancient stone. I am going to drink whatever he pours, and I am going to pay attention, and I am going to get out of here. Or I am going to take everything he has. One or the other. Either will do. I swallow the wine. I set down the glass. I meet his eyes. Pour me another, I say. Something shifts in his expression. So brief I almost miss it. Then that not quite smile returns, darker this time. He pours. If you are already leaning forward, that is the point. Stay with me. And if the darkness is your kind of beautiful, a quick subscribe keeps it coming. 3 nights in the cellar. The same ritual each time. He comes at 10 o'clock. I know this because the church bells from the village carry through the stone walls, 5 kilometers away, faint but unmistakable. He comes alone. No guards inside, though I hear 2 outside the iron door. He brings the wine himself. Same vintage, same bottle, like a ceremony. The questions are financial at first. He wants to know how I found the Malta Trust. Who else knows? Whether I copied the files before they took me. I answer what I choose to answer. I leave gaps. I watch what the gaps do to him, what I discover by the end of the second night. Luciano Malaspina does not lose his temper. He does not raise his voice. He does not threaten me directly. He simply narrows, goes still and more concentrated when he is displeased, like a lens focusing light. I find this more frightening than shouting would have been. Rage is loud. You can track it. This man's anger is quiet and surgical. What I discover by the third night, he is testing me, the same way I am testing him. You know what I find interesting? He says on that third night. He has poured my third glass. The wine is doing what it does. The edges of the room soften slightly, my exhaustion pressing heavier into my bones. But my mind, strangely, stays sharp. It always has with alcohol. My brain seems to run on it rather than being clouded by it. You've told me almost nothing of practical value, but you keep asking questions, subtle ones. You ask the guard who brings my food his name. You've counted the bottles on that rack 3 times. He tilts his head. Most prisoners beg. Some go silent. You study. I'm a forensic accountant, I say. I study everything. What have you learned? I look at him over the rim of my glass. That you're more afraid of something than you're letting on. The room goes still. The candlelight doesn't move. He doesn't move. Careful, he says. One word, quiet as a thread pulled taut. You wouldn't have taken me yourself if this were routine, I continue. You would have sent someone, an underboss, your fixer, Dr. Tenebre. I know his name, by the way. I found a payment to a Silvio Tenebre in your Maltese trust. Large, irregular, not structured the way legitimate consulting fees are structured. I set down my glass. You came yourself because you can't afford this leaking, not even internally. He is quiet for a long moment. Then, you are either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most reckless. I'm neither. I'm just very good at reading ledgers. I meet his eyes. And you, Don Malaspina, have a rat in your family. That lands. I see it. The smallest tightening around his eyes, the way his thumb stills against the stem of his glass. It lands because it is true, and because I have just told him I know what it is. He does not confirm it. He does not deny it. What he does is pour himself a second glass, which, in 3 nights, he has not done before. He drinks slowly, looking not at me but at the middle distance, at something I cannot see. "How much have you reconstructed from what you saw?" he finally asks. "Enough to understand the shape of it," I say. "Not enough to know who yet." He looks at me then, really looks, not the considering look of a man assessing a problem. Something else, something I cannot name but can feel, a change in temperature, in weight. "You'll sleep in the East Wing tonight," he says. "Not down here." That is the first change. I am moved from the cellar to a proper room. Stone walls still, iron-framed bed, but a window that faces the sea. Barred, but a window. A bathroom. Clothes laid out that fit as though someone measured me while I wasn't looking. I sit on the edge of the bed in the dark and run my fingers over the window bars and think about rats and empires, about the shape of betrayal from the inside. He is trying to identify his traitor, and he thinks, or has decided, that I can help him do it. Which means I have leverage I did not have this morning. I file this information the way I file everything, precisely, without sentiment, in a place I will not lose it. Sleep comes eventually. In my dreams, someone pours wine into a wound and it heals instead of burns. On the fourth morning, Marco Zampaglione brings breakfast. I know who he is because Lupo uses his name in front of me without thinking, or perhaps while thinking very carefully. Marco, Pharaoh, Iron. He has the face of a man who has been loyal so long his loyalty has calcified into something architectural. He sets down a tray, real food, not the bread and cheese from the cellar days, and says nothing. "He trusts you," I say as Marco turns to leave. Marco stops, does not turn around. "That's rare for him, isn't it?" I say. Not a question. A pause, then, "Eat your breakfast, Signorina Bellagamba." He leaves. I eat, I think. And after breakfast, Lupo comes. Not in the evenings this time. Morning light through the barred window. Him in a charcoal suit this time. The full armor of his position, standing in the doorway of my room as though uncertain whether to enter, which I find remarkable. This man in this place, uncertain about a threshold. "I need to show you something," he says. He takes me to his study. It is a room that explains him better than any conversation has. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, not decorative but used, the spines worn and marked. A massive mahogany desk with 3 separate phones and a laptop with the screen angled away from the door on reflex. Maps on the walls, not decorative, tactical. And photographs. Framed, formal family photos alongside something more private. A younger version of him, maybe 20, standing with an older man whose eyes are identical to his. The father. Dead now, I recall from the financial records. Killed 8 years ago in an ambush that was officially ruled a car accident. He sets a folder on the desk and opens it toward me. "Read it," he says. I read it. It takes 15 minutes. When I look up, my assessment of the situation has changed entirely. The folder contains 6 months of internal financial activity. Transactions, transfers, commission payments. And threaded through it, almost invisible if you don't know what you are looking for, is a pattern. Irregular disbursements, small enough not to trigger internal review, accumulating in a structure I recognize immediately because I have seen it before in corporate fraud cases, in embezzlement investigations. Money leaving the family in thin threads and pooling somewhere else. Someone is building a war chest. "This started 8 months ago," he says. "The same 8 months I was investigating him." "Coincidence?" I ask. "I don't believe in coincidence." He sits on the edge of the desk, watches me. "Someone inside my family learned that an investigator had found our financial trail, Instead of alerting me, as they should have, they use the information. They've been quietly preparing to survive whatever comes next, which means they're planning to let it come. I look at the folder. Look at him. You think they're going to sell you out, hand you to the authorities, and step into the gap. I think, he says carefully, that they already have a buyer, and I think the transaction is nearly complete. The room is very quiet. Outside the window, I can hear the sea. What do you want from me? I want you to find the thread and follow it home. He slides the folder the rest of the way toward me. You found the Malta Trust, the Catania account. You understood the structure in 15 minutes that my own financial people have been staring at for 6 weeks. I need you to identify who is running this. And in exchange, he is quiet for a moment. Something crosses his face. Not discomfort exactly, but the expression of a man who has rarely had to negotiate with someone he has in captivity. Your freedom. Full documentation that you were acting under duress and cannot be prosecuted. Enough money that you never need to work again. And my personal guarantee that no one from this family will come near you, your parents in Florence, or your sister in Rome. He pauses. Ever. The mention of my family is not a threat. It is structured as protection, but we both understand the geometry of it, that protection and threat occupy the same shape in his world, depending on who holds it. I close the folder. I'll need full access to your financial records, all of them, not the curated version. And I'll need to understand the family structure, every captain, every associate, their loyalties and their debts. He looks at me for a long moment. You're not afraid of me. I'm terrified of you, I say honestly, but I'm more afraid of a situation I can't map. Give me the map and I function. Another long pause. Then something changes in his face. Softens is not quite the right word, but something loosens. Va bene, he says. We have a deal. I extend my hand. He looks at it, genuinely surprised, I think, by the formality, then takes it. His hand is warm. His grip is careful, as though he is aware of exactly how much force he could apply and is deliberately not applying it. I shake the hand of the most dangerous man in Sicily and think, I have just walked myself deeper in, but deeper in has always been where I do my best work. Engagement. If you were Sarah, would you have taken the deal or tried to escape? Drop your answer below. I read everyone. The next 10 days are the strangest of my life. By day, I sit at a table in the study with the full financial archive of the Malaspina family spread before me. Physical ledgers alongside digital files, going back 40 years, 2 laptops, a secure tablet, the Wi-Fi password, though the network is firewalled and monitored. I test its edges quietly and feel eyes notice. Lupo gives me what I ask for, cleanly and without excessive commentary, which is more than I can say for most of the men I've worked for legally. By night, the wine. It has changed. He no longer forces it. That is the wrong word for what happens now, though offer is perhaps also imprecise. He brings the bottle to the study after dinner. We work. He asks questions from his side of the desk. Family history, operational structures, the logic behind certain old decisions. And I ask questions from mine, and somewhere in the space between questions we drink. The glasses refill without either of us marking when. I notice what the wine does to him more than what it does to me. He becomes not softer exactly, but less compressed, less like a weapon at rest and more like a man. He starts sentences he abandons. He laughs once, a real one, unexpected, at something I say about the creative accounting in a shipment manifest from 2017. And the sound of it catches me off guard entirely. I add it to my file. The laugh, the abandoned sentences, the fact that he takes his coffee without sugar but keeps a small dish of it on the desk that he never touches, and the photograph in the left desk drawer. I see it when he opens the drawer for a pen. A woman, dark-haired, his age or slightly younger, holding a child. He closes the drawer before I can fully register it. He does not know I saw it. I file this too. On the 5th day, I find the thread. It is buried in a supply chain payment from 14 months ago, a disbursement to a logistics company in Messina that does not appear in any other record before or after. Small, clean. The kind of transaction that passes review because it looks exactly like every other legitimate operational cost. Except this one has a routing code I have seen before, in a different context, under a different name, in the Malta records I was building my original case from. I sit back, I look at what I am holding, then I do something I perhaps should not. I do not immediately bring it to Lupo. I sit with it for 1 hour. I trace the thread further in both directions, where it came from, where it went. And I begin to understand the full architecture, not just a rat selling information to authorities, something larger, a planned transfer of power, carefully constructed over more than a year, involving a rival family and someone inside this house with enough access to have been trusted completely. The name I arrive at is not one I expected. I pull up Dr. Silvio Tenebra's payment records, the ones I first flagged 8 months ago from Florence. They tell a story that is elegant and horrible. That evening, when Lupo pours the wine, I watch him from across the study and think about what it means to tell someone that one of their oldest allies has been selling them piece by piece. I think about what kind of man receives that information and what kind of man does not. I found it, I say. He goes still, sets down his glass. Tell me. I tell him. All of it. The full architecture, the routing code, the Messina company, the direction of the money, the pattern in Tenebra's payments that only becomes visible when you stack it against the rival family's expansion timeline. 14 months of preparation, a sophisticated operation that required patience and access and very specific knowledge of how Lupo's internal finances moved. I watch his face as I speak. He does not interrupt. He does not move. When I finish, the silence is so complete I can hear the sea again, though we are not near the window. Tenebra, he says. The name comes out flat, without effect, the way a man says something that has permanently changed the shape of something. Yes. He stands, walks to the window, stands with his back to me, looking out at the dark sea, and I watch the line of his shoulders and the way his hands hang at his sides, still, completely still, and understand that this is what grief looks like in a man who cannot afford grief. How long have you known? He asks. 2 days. I say it cleanly, without excuse. He turns. Why did you wait? Because I needed to be certain, and because I wanted to understand the full shape of it before I handed you something you couldn't unknow. He looks at me for a long moment. That was either very careful or very calculated. Both, I say. Usually it is both. He comes back to the desk, sits. He does not pick up his glass. Marco will handle it, he says finally. Tonight. I do not ask what that means. I already know what it means. We sit in silence for a long time. The wine sits untouched between us. Outside, the sea moves the way it always does, patient, indifferent, eternal. The night Tenebra disappears from the villa. A storm comes in from the south. I hear it building from my room, the sea changing register, the wind finding the gaps in the stone walls and running through them like breath through a reed. The villa, which holds sound differently in storms, starts to feel smaller, closer. I cannot sleep. I walk to the window and watch lightning hit the water. I hear him in the corridor at 2 a.m, not walking, standing. I hear the particular stillness of someone outside a door, which I have learned to identify in this place where so much communication is done in the arrangement of silences. I open the door. He is there in the corridor, jacket gone, one hand resting against the opposite wall, looking at the floor as though he left something there. He looks up when I open the door, and for one unguarded moment I see something on his face that he has kept below the surface for 2 weeks. The cost of this. Not regret, exactly. Something heavier. "You should be sleeping," he says. "So should you." A pause. Lightning through the high corridor window, the thunder following it. "He was with my father when I was 12, he says. Tenebra. He was there before I was. I do not say I'm sorry because it would be inadequate and hollow. I say nothing, which is the honest thing. "Come have a drink," he says. Not a command this time. Something quieter. We go back to the study. He pours. The wine is different tonight. A white, something older, something that smells of mineral and salt and sea air, as though it has been aging in proximity to the water outside. He does not seem to notice what he has poured. He sits on the sofa rather than the desk chair. I sit at the other end. The storm makes the room feel sealed, apart from time. "Tell me something true," he says. The request surprises me. I think for a moment. "I was afraid the first night, not of you specifically, of the not knowing. I can manage almost anything if I understand the shape of it. The shapelessness was the worst part." He nods slowly. "And now?" "The shape is clearer." I look at him, which is its own kind of frightening. He is quiet. Then, "My mother left when I was 9. She went back to Rome, to her family, to a life that didn't have blood in it. I don't blame her. My father told me she was weak. I spent 20 years believing that." A pause. "I stopped believing it about 2 years ago." He turns the glass in his hands. "I think now that she was the bravest person I've known. She looked at what this life was and she left it, which is something no one in my world had ever done." I let that settle. "Why are you telling me this?" I ask. He looks at me. In the stormlight, his face is stripped of the usual architecture of authority. He looks like a man who has been holding something very heavy for a very long time and has perhaps briefly set it down. "Because you're the first person in this house I can't perform for," he says. "You already know too much. The performance is redundant." Something moves through me that I do not have a clean word for. Not pity. Nothing so condescending. Recognition, maybe. The particular recognition of one person who has built elaborate professional armor, identifying the same strategy in another. "I was engaged," I say, 3 years ago. He was kind and ordinary and safe, and I ended it because I couldn't stop working. Couldn't stop pulling at financial threads that didn't belong to me. He said I was more interested in other people's secrets than in being known myself. I look at my wine. He was right. Was he? Lupo asks. Partially. I think I was afraid of what knowing cost. If you let someone see the real architecture of you, you can't take it back. Another silence. The storm peaks and then slowly begins to ease. At some point, the distance between us on the sofa has closed without either of us apparently deciding to close it. I become aware of this gradually, the way you become aware of warmth, not in a single moment, but incrementally, until it is simply present. He is looking at me, and I am looking at him, and the space between us is no longer a professional one. "Sarah," he says, and the way he says my name is different from every other time he has said it. Stripped of the power dynamic, stripped of captor and captive, just 2 syllables carrying a weight I am not entirely prepared for. I close the remaining distance. What follows is not gentle, exactly, but it is honest. The particular honesty of 2 people who have spent 2 weeks stripping the protective layers from each other and have run out of remaining pretense. No performance on either side. Just the storm outside and the wine on the table and the terrible intimacy of being fully seen. Afterward, he sleeps. I don't, for a long time. I lie in the dark of his room and stare at the ceiling and feel the shape of a new and dangerous thing taking root in my chest. In the morning, I am back in my own room before dawn. Neither of us mentions it, but everything is different. 3 days after Tenebrae disappears, the first shipment gets hit. I am in the study when Marco comes in. He speaks quietly to Lupo in Sicilian, too fast for me to follow completely, but I hear the shape of it. A convoy, somewhere east of Palermo, ambushed, 3 men dead, the cargo gone, and a second location, a warehouse in Trapani, simultaneously raided by law enforcement with what sounds like very specific intelligence. Lupo's face does not change. He asks 2 questions in the same quiet Sicilian. Marco answers. Lupo nods. Marco leaves. The silence that follows has a different texture from the usual ones. This one has teeth. It's already moving, I say. Yes. Tenebrae wasn't working alone. I pull the folder toward me. I have been building something in it for 2 days. Not just the original thread, but everything adjacent to it. The geometry of the betrayal, the network of smaller decisions and smaller loyalties that supported it. He was the architect, but the structural work was distributed. Multiple people, most of them probably unaware of the full picture. I tap a page. This one. Isolde Provenza. She is listed as a logistics coordinator in your Messina operation. She is also the daughter of a man who owes a significant debt to Tommaso Brambilla. Lupo goes very still. La Volpe, he says. The fox. She's been redirecting information about your shipping routes for at least 6 months. Not large amounts, nothing that would trigger internal review, but accumulated over time, Brambilla has a nearly complete map of your operational patterns. He picks up the folder, reads, sets it down. What else? I tell him what else. I have been building this picture carefully, the way I always build a case, from the edges inward, establishing what is certain before moving to inference. By the time I am finished, the picture is more complicated and more damaging than either of us knew when we started. Brambilla has been planning for 18 months. He has not just been buying information, he has been buying people. Small loyalties, carefully placed. People who owe debts or harbor grievances or simply want to survive what they believe is coming. He has been constructing a parallel power structure, invisible from the inside, designed to activate the moment Lupo is weakened enough. The law enforcement raid is the signal. Brambilla's bid to become the dominant family in Sicily begins now. How long do we have? Lupo asks. Days, maybe. A week if the legal response is slower than he planned. He nods. A long pause. We, he says. I realize what I said. The word came out without architecture, without calculation. We. It's the correct pronoun for people working toward the same problem, I say. He looks at me for a moment. Something in his eyes. Not soft exactly, but open. So it is. He calls Marco. He calls 2 of his capos, men I have come to know by name and by their financial profiles, their loyalties and their pressures. There is a meeting in the long dining room that night. I am not invited, but I am also not told to leave. I sit at the far end of the table with my folder and my laptop, and I am simply present, and no one questions it. Lupo lays out what he knows. He does not reveal the full source. He says only that the financial investigation has produced results, which is accurate as far as it goes. He watches his men's faces carefully as he speaks. I watch their faces too. I note who asks which questions. I note who is too still and who is genuinely surprised. I note the micro expressions, the ones financial fraud investigators are trained to read, because the face of a man hearing news he already knew looks subtly different from the face of a man genuinely shocked by it. By the end of the meeting, I have identified 2 more names. Smaller fish than Tenebrae, but fish nonetheless. A capo who asked the wrong question too quickly, an associate whose surprise came half a beat late. I write the names in my folder. Later that night, Lupo finds me in the study. "You were watching them," he says. "I watch everyone." "What did you see?" I slide the folder toward him. He reads the 2 names, looks up. "You're certain?" "Fairly. The body language is consistent with the financial pattern. Neither one is confirmed. I'd want more to be certain. But as starting points for closer attention?" I meet his eyes. "Yes." He closes the folder, holds it for a moment. "When I took you," he says slowly, "I thought you were a problem to be solved. And now?" A pause. The candlelight moves between us. "Now I think I may have made a fundamental error in classification," he says. "Engagement. Did you guess who the second traitor was before the reveal? Let me know in the comments. And tell me who you think Sarah should trust least in that room." Brambilla does not wait a week. He moves on the 4th day. I am asleep when it starts. Deep, dreamless sleep. The kind that comes from spending 16 hours rebuilding a financial map from scratch. I wake to the sound of the iron door at the end of the east corridor slamming open. Boots on stone. Voices in Sicilian, low and urgent. I am out of bed and dressed in 30 seconds. Old habit from years of early morning client crises. I open my door. The corridor is controlled chaos. Marco is moving fast, directing 2 men toward the stairs. One of Lupo's junior capos is on a phone, his face tight. A 3rd man I don't recognize is down, not dead, but injured. Arm held at an angle that means something is broken. His jacket dark with blood from a cut on his forehead. I do not run. I walk quickly. There is a difference, and it matters. I find Lupo in the study. He is in combat mode, a version of him I have not seen before, though I knew it existed. Still and fast simultaneously, the way very dangerous things move. He is giving instructions into a phone with one hand while reading something on the laptop with the other. Gun on the desk beside him, visible, handled with the casual familiarity of something that has always been there. He sees me. A flicker of something crosses his face. Relief or its near cousin. "Stay in this room," he says. "What's happening?" "Brambilla moved on 2 of my captains in the city, simultaneously. One is dead. The other is at a hospital under a false name." He looks back at the laptop. "He also has men on the road up from the village. He knows where we are." "Tenebra told him," I say, "before or after Marco found him." "Yes." A pause. The sounds in the corridor are settling. Controlled movement rather than panic now, men finding their positions. "He's not coming for a battle," I say. My mind is already moving through what I know of Brambilla's financial structure, his operational patterns, the way he has historically moved. He's coming for you specifically. Brambilla's approach has always been decapitation. Remove the head, the body follows. If you're gone, the family fractures. The families that owe him fill the gap. This was never a war. It's an assassination and a power transfer dressed as a war. Lupo looks at me. "How do you know his operational style?" "Because I found his financial records in your archive. You've been collecting intelligence on him for years. I read it." I move to the laptop. "May I?" A brief hesitation. Then he steps aside. I pull up what I need. Cross-reference Brambilla's known safe houses against the pattern of small property purchases that started 18 months ago. The same timeline as everything else. I find what I am looking for in 40 seconds, not intuition. Data. He has a coordination point, I say. A warehouse property in Montreal purchased through a holding company 14 months ago. It doesn't appear in his known operational records, but it does appear in a legal filing from a construction dispute last year. He would have wanted something close but not obvious. I turn the screen. This is where he's running this from. If you neutralize the coordination point, the men on the road are cut off from their instructions. Lupo reads the screen, looks at me. You pulled this in under a minute. I had the records memorized. I pause. Also, I'm very fast. For just a moment, in the middle of the controlled crisis with men moving in his corridors and his empire under attack, he almost smiles. So you are. He takes out a second phone, calls someone, gives an address in Montreal. 3 sentences, clean and precise, hangs up. Then he picks up the gun and looks at me. I need you to stay here and stay away from any exterior window, he says. Marco will be with you. I understand. He moves toward the door, stops. Sarah? I look at him. He does not finish the sentence. He doesn't need to. The sentence is in the way he says my name, with 2 weeks of late nights and wine and honesty compressed into 2 syllables. Go, I say. Come back. He goes. The next 3 hours are among the worst of my life. I sit with Marco in the study. Marco does not speak. He drinks espresso and keeps a hand near his jacket and watches the door. And I sit at the desk and work because working is the only thing that makes time move in a direction I can tolerate. I am not afraid of dying exactly. I am afraid of something else, of this thing that has grown between Lupo and me in 2 weeks being cut short before it has resolved into anything I can name or hold. I drink the wine that is already open on the desk. I work. I wait. At 2 a.m, Lupo walks back through the door. He is unhurt. Mostly. There is a cut above his left eyebrow that someone has closed with 2 strips of tape rather than stitches, and he is moving with a slight economy on his left side that suggests something bruised beneath the jacket. He is also entirely in control of himself, calm in the way that follows violence when the person doing it is practiced, when the adrenaline has already metabolized. He sets the gun on the desk, pours wine, drinks. Brambilla? I ask. Detained. A pause. Pending negotiation. I understand what detained means in this context. The Montreal address? Exactly where you said. He looks at me. His coordination was disrupted before the main force could move. The men on the road withdrew when they lost contact with the center. A pause. Your data saved lives tonight. Marco says something in Sicilian from the doorway. Lupo responds. Marco nods and leaves. We are alone. The study feels different, larger and smaller simultaneously. The storm from the other night has passed, but the air still carries something of it, charged and clean. How many people know what I've contributed to this? I ask. He looks at me steadily. Marco. Myself. Keep it that way. I intend to. He crosses the room and sits opposite me, looks at me with an expression I have come to recognize as his version of unguarded. When this settles, and it will settle, there are conversations to be had with the other families, arrangements to be renegotiated. What do you want? I have been thinking about this question for days. I have been building the answer the same way I build a financial case, methodically from first principles, refusing to let sentiment distort the structure. I want the Malta dossier, I say. My original investigation. I want the full archive, complete and unredacted, in my possession. He is quiet for a moment. That would give you enough to destroy what remains of the family if you chose to use it. Yes. You're asking me to hand you the weapon. I'm asking you to demonstrate that this is a partnership rather than a continued captivity with better furniture. The silence stretches. His eyes don't leave mine. What else? He says finally. I want a real role, not consultant, not prisoner, not protected asset. If I've proven that I understand the financial architecture of this family better than anyone currently in it, I want that acknowledged structurally. I want authority commensurate with what I actually do. He studies me. A long pause, not hesitation, but the kind of deep consideration he gives to things that matter. You know what you are asking, he says, in this world, what it means to be formally inside it. I know what I am asking. There is no ordinary life after it, no going back to Florence, to forensic accounting, to safe work for law enforcement. I burned that bridge, I say simply, the night I didn't report what I found about Tenebra immediately, the night after that storm. I hold his gaze. I made my choices. I want to make them consciously rather than by default. He looks at me for a long time. Then he picks up his wine glass and holds it toward me. The family accounts have been mismanaged since my father died, he says. I have been running them on instinct and inherited structure, neither of which is adequate. A pause. I need someone who understands money the way I understand people. I lift my glass. To a restructuring, I say, the ghost of a smile. To a restructuring. We drink. And then, because the night has been long and the danger has passed, and we are two people who have spent 2 weeks dismantling their own walls piece by piece, the wine glass is set aside, and the desk is between us for only a moment longer before it is not. I do not think about Florence. I do not think about the life I will not be returning to. I think about the sensation of choosing something, of stepping into it with your eyes fully open, knowing the cost, paying it anyway. Much later in the dark, he says, "You planned this." Not an accusation, an observation, impressed even. I improvised extensively, I say, but from the second night, you were already building a position. I consider denying this. From the first night, actually, I say instead, when you poured the second glass. He is quiet, then low and almost to himself. I never had a chance. Neither did I say honestly. It just took me longer to admit it. 2 weeks after Brambila's removal, Lupo calls a meeting of the full council. All surviving capos, the allied family representatives, the consigliere position, now vacant, conspicuously empty at the table. 12 men in a room that smells of old wood and fresh tobacco, sitting around a table that has seen more history than most museums. I stand to one side as the meeting begins, not at the table. Beside it, close enough to hear everything, close enough for everyone present to be uncertain where to place me in their hierarchy of concern. Some of them know my name. Most of them do not know what I have done or how much I know. I have been, by design, a presence without clear definition. Lupo opens the meeting with a financial accounting of the past month's events. The losses, the recovered assets, the restructured debts from 3 rival families who have decided that cooperation with Malaspina is preferable to affiliation with Brambilla. He speaks with precision and authority. He is, in this mode, exactly the man he was built to be. And then he says, the family will undergo structural changes, beginning with financial oversight. Several heads turn toward me. Serafina Bellagamba will assume the role of Chief Financial Administrator. She has full authority over accounts, disbursements, and operational finance. Her decisions in these areas carry my authority. He pauses. Any question about this should be raised now rather than after. No one speaks. I watch their faces. I have been watching their faces for 2 weeks, at the dinner table, in corridors, in the small, unguarded moments between formal interactions. I know which of them are genuinely loyal. I know which are calculating. I know which will need managing. I know because I have their financial profiles memorized, and money is the truest mirror a person owns. Good, Lupo says, and closes the meeting. What happens afterward is quieter and more consequential than the meeting itself. I spend 3 days restructuring the family's financial architecture from the root up, isolating the accounts that were compromised, rerouting the supply chain through structures that Brambilla's people cannot trace, building new oversight mechanisms, systems that create accountability without creating exposure. I work 20-hour days and drink enormous quantities of espresso and 3 glasses of wine each evening, and I have never, in my professional life, felt more precisely in the right place for my specific capabilities. On the 3rd evening, Marco finds me in the study. He sets a folder on the table, my name on the tab. From the dawn, he says, and leaves. I open it. Inside is the Malta dossier, complete, unredacted, exactly as I built it 8 months ago in Florence. Every document, every thread I traced, all of it. There is a note in Lupo's handwriting, 3 words. As agreed, yours. I hold the folder for a long time, the weight of it, what it represents, what it gives me, what having it and choosing not to use it means, settles into my chest and stays there. I put it in the drawer of the desk that is now mine. I close the drawer. That evening, Lupo and I eat dinner together at the long table in the dining room. Not the formal dinner of the first weeks. No performance of power, no wine brought as ritual. Just food and wine and the sea visible through the tall windows, dark and endless under a sky that is finally cleared. The Brambilla negotiation concludes tomorrow, he says. I know. I restructured the payment terms this afternoon. He looks up from his plate. Without telling me. The original terms created a perverse incentive structure. I corrected it. I meet his eyes. I left you a summary. A pause. The corner of his mouth moves. You restructured my blackmail terms. I prefer renegotiated strategic settlement. I lift my wine glass. The incentive structure matters. Brambilla pays more in the short term and significantly less in the long term, but the payment is tied to a behavior clause that gives you ongoing leverage. It is better for both parties. He looks at me. You are either the greatest problem I have ever created for myself or the greatest asset. These are not mutually exclusive, I say. He raises his glass. I raise mine. We drink. Later, we walk along the terrace above the sea, something we have begun doing in the evenings, wordlessly, because neither of us suggested it and neither of us stopped the other. The air is warm and smells of salt and night-blooming jasmine. I need to ask you something, he says. Ask. Are you here because you chose to be, or because the alternative was foreclosed? I think about this carefully. I owe him the honest answer. Both were true 3 weeks ago, I say. The alternative is foreclosed. That part remains. But choice was layered on top of it, progressively, until the foreclosure is no longer the reason I'm standing here. I look at him. The reason I'm standing here is that I am where I am most useful, beside the person I find most legible, doing work that feels like the truest version of what I am capable of. A pause. That is what staying by choice looks like for me. He is quiet for a long moment. Then he takes my hand, simply, without ceremony, the way you take the hand of someone you have decided to keep. We stand at the edge of the terrace and look at the sea. The empire stretching in all directions behind us, wounded and healing, compromised and restructuring, violent and beautiful in the specific way that powerful things are always both. You forced me to drink, I say, because I have been waiting to say it. Not as accusation, but as punctuation, the closing of a circle. Yes, he says. No apology, no excuse. The truth of it, acknowledged. I used every glass, I say. He looks at me, the not quite smile, the one I have learned to read as its own language. I know, he says. From the second night, I knew. And you kept pouring. Yes. I squeeze his hand. He squeezes back. Below us, the sea is dark and patient and permanent. The same sea that has watched Sicily's empires rise and fracture and reform for 3,000 years, indifferent to who holds the throne, certain only that someone always will. Tonight, in this villa, the someone is us. Engagement. Was Lupo right to hand Sarah the Malta dossier? Or did he just give her the power to destroy everything? Tell me what you think she does with it in 10 years. I want your theories. Serafina Bellagamba went to Palermo as evidence, a loose thread in a wolf's empire. She left it as something the Sicilian families would spend years trying to name. Not wife, not consigliere, not captive. Something new. The woman who understood the money, who had memorized the bones of the beast before she tamed it, who had turned forced wine into a sharpening stone and emerged from the cellar with her edges keener than when she entered. Lupo Malaspina, the wolf of Palermo, would never be called soft. His empire did not become gentle. The world he ruled remained exactly as dark and dangerous and blood-soaked as it had always been. But it was better run. And on winter evenings, when the Sicilian coast pulled the cold in from the water and the villa sealed itself against the weather, two people who had each been, in their own way, the loneliest in the room, sat in a study full of books and maps and the smell of old stone and good wine, and were not lonely. That is not a small thing. In a world that runs on power and fear and blood, finding one person who sees the real architecture of you and stays anyway is the rarest transaction of all. If this story stayed with you, if Sarah's particular brand of quiet war resonated, subscribe and stay in the dark with us. There is always another empire, always another wolf, always another woman who understands, from the very first glass, exactly what she is doing. I will see you in the next one.